Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Hislop. I'm the ELSO Coordinator Liaison for the Steering Committee. Welcome to the Coordinators Meeting. Thank you so much for getting up early in the morning. I know how painful that was this morning. Trust me, I'm with you. By way of introduction, just to look at what we're going to be doing this morning, I do have just a couple announcements to start off with. I have one person that wants to share some information with you. And then the cadence of the presentation after that, we're just going to go over a little bit of brief background as far as what my role is and how I interact with ELSO and how you can help join that effort if you would like to. And then we're going to go through some case presentations. Wei-Ting Chen from UCLA Medical Center is with me. We'll each go through like a case presentation in the spirit of our coordinator symposiums, but really the intent of the conversation this morning is that's as a thought experiment to just get the intellectual juices flowing a little bit, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and discussion. So with all that being said, I want to introduce Jonathan Haft. Jonathan is a cardiothoracic surgeon at University of Michigan. He's just going to share. Jonathan is the steering committee representative from the technology chair, or from the technology committee, excuse me. So I'm going to give him just a couple minutes to share some things that they're working on. John.
Thanks, Robin. Good morning, everybody. 7 a.m. on these meetings is always tricky, but thanks for doing it. I want to talk to you about the registry, specifically aspects of the registry related to technology. So for those of you that do your own case report form entry, it's manual. You enter in the devices, the technology that we use, the oxygenators, the pumps, the cannulas, and so forth. All that is done manually. We know from the registry that it is not always perfect, that oftentimes people are entering devices that in fact they're not using, and sometimes they even enter devices that are no longer available. We also know that the process is quite laborious for you, and we think there's an opportunity that not only can make the ELSO registry more accurate, more granular, but potentially can make your work easier. And it's a digital platform. Every device in the United States has a scannable code, a scannable barcode that leads to a number called a GUID ID, G-U-D-I-D, Global Universal Device Identifier. And that identifier is housed in the FDA. It's a U.S. thing, and it will tell us specifically what device, but not only will it tell us exactly what device it is, it will tell us where that device was manufactured, when it was manufactured, the lot number, when it was distributed. It will tell you the name of the driver of the UPS truck that dropped it off. And so all of that is potentially helpful, not only to ELSO, to centers, but also to manufacturers, because if there's ever a problem, we can use that information then to find out exactly what's going on and then know what other centers potentially are using similar devices. The logistics of it, it's fairly easy. You can use your iPhone, an Android phone, and scan these codes, and it would then go directly into the database. But obviously, the devil is in the details. We know that many times the packages are opened long before you enter your case report forms. And in fact, many times the packages are opened long before you even have a patient, right? As you're priming your circuit, that package is gone. And so every center may have a different approach how to deal with it. Some centers may want to just sort of save all the packages, and once it gets assigned to a patient, then you start scanning them and assign it to your case report form. There are potentially virtual ways that ELSO has in place where you could scan it. It could go into this sort of cyberspace virtual repository, and then as you do your case report form, you can then reach and grab the specific devices. And I think different programs are going to have different approaches to it that are going to work for their own workflow, but we want to understand that. And so we're looking for volunteer 10 to 15 sites that we're willing to do beta testing. We want to get diversity of programs. We want to get big programs, small programs, pediatric-only programs. We want to get programs that have multiple hospitals that submit to ELSO under one center. And then we're looking to see from some international sites how things work there. There may be good ID symbols on those packages. It's a U.S. thing, but manufacturers may still be sending it with the same good ID at international sites. So if any of you are interested in volunteering to be a beta testing site, please reach out to Peter Reiches in the ECMO office, the ELSO office, and we're going to sign you up. It obviously is going to be a little bit of duplicity of work because we're still going to ask you to manually enter your devices as we go through working out the kinks of this process. But if you are interested, we appreciate that. And again, reach out to Peter Reiches. So thank you very much for your time. I don't mean to hijack your meeting anymore. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you so much, John. Okay, just a little bit of additional housekeeping. So just to orient to the structure, so the coordinator liaison for the steering committee is a relatively new role, and it's somewhat evolving, and it is evolving in what was the middle of a pandemic. So really the theme of, I serve in this role for 3 years, and I'm 6 months-ish into that. From my perspective, the theme of what I would like to accomplish over the next 3 years is increase connectivity, and especially like live and real-time connectivity between everyone in this room, between coordinators that run across issues in their center that want a support system to reach out to. So in that vein, where we've started is with some what we've been calling symposiums, which is just topic-based discussions that we've been hosting on a quarterly basis online. But I would really I would also like to finalize a process to utilize some of the technology that we've all been using over the last 2 to 3 years to basically have live chat rooms and whatnot where we can reach out to each other. And then a number of you have reached out to me over the course of the week with ideas about what ELSO, the organization, might be able to do to help support member centers. Of course, when you have 400 member centers, I do want to, pause and be a little bit thoughtful to make sure that we're doing the right thing for, most of the people out there, and that we're not in opposition to one another. But really, that's the role. I don't view my role as my opinion to the ELSO steering committee. I'm a mouthpiece for all of you in this room and all of you across the country. So we have put together a steering committee, like a working committee for that underneath all of those objectives. And you see the names of the folks here. And for those of you that that have been working with us, the folks on the screen have really been doing the work to put together the symposiums over the last 2 quarters. And we will follow that kind of theme through a little bit this morning. But if any of you are in the room this morning, I kind of lost track of who was coming and going in the last 10 minutes. But for those of you that have been working with us that would like to join us up on stage to kind of help moderate and lead this discussion this morning, I would absolutely welcome you to join on stage. But thank you so much to every one of the individuals listed here. My Michelle Hurd announcements. So SECMO for the next 3 years, we're going in a cadence of Florida, where you can have an opportunity to get eaten by an alligator, and then out to LA, where it's a wee bit safer, apparently, in, what was that, 2024, and then back to Florida, where you might have the same opportunity in 2025. So just to keep those on your calendar as far as long-term planning. And then Michelle, I did see you walk in, although I don't, thank you so much. So Michelle just wanted to share a couple Center of Excellence Award announcements with you.
Just a quick word about the SECMO conference. So that is, for those of you who are new to ELSO, is the Specialist Education Conference. It's meant for the bedside practitioner, so it's a little less scientific than what you see at this movie. It was a really late night last night. At this conference, it's really meant to kind of give you some nuts and bolts and really good updates, so I hope you put it on your conference radar attendance. And I'm also kind of the unofficial collector of centers who would like to host the next meeting, so you can see we're up for the next 3 years, but if you want to think long-term, and think about hosting a meeting. The only thing I really try to do is to move it around the country. So we really can't go back to Florida again for a couple of years. As a Georgia fan, that's really an absolute. From our Center of Excellence, we just wanted to update you on a couple of things that should be important for you when you go home. There are really no significant changes to the application. I know that's one of the questions we always get. Are any of the questions changing significantly? So no. There's been some slight changes to the wording to afford clarity. We really want to encourage you, if you are a program who either has not applied or has applied before and would like to get better or make more points, to use the evaluation readiness tool with the worksheet, which is really all of the questions, and to really kind of evaluate your program. That worksheet is also the greatest tool for working on and finalizing and then cut and paste into the online application. Really don't plan on working in the online application. It's very cumbersome and it'll take you a lot of time, and I hate for you to lose work, so always have a backup for your work. And one exciting thing that we're going to have happen this fall is that the website under your centers page will now have a history of your previous awards and your letters with your scores. So with a lot of turnover that's happened in the past couple of years, we've gotten a lot of emails about, well, I don't know when we were and I don't know where my letter is and can you help me? So the website guys are only going to be able to go back to 2016. So if it is before that, you will still have to email me, but we'll find out. And then, as you all know, there's the supply chain issues, so everything is more expensive. So we have raised our fees for the first time since 2014. So they are going up by basically $1,000, so $4,500 for the full center application, $3,000 for the silver or Path to Excellence application. And then just a reminder about dates. So it will open on October 15th for the 2023 cycle, and definitely will be closing on March 1st. No more pandemic means no more extension. So March 1st it will be due. And then if you haven't seen this yet, the award period is now based on a calendar year. It used to be from September, this meeting, to September in 3 years. So now all of the people who were awarded last night don't actually become in effect until January 1st of 2023. And then they will expire December 31st of 2026. So if you are expiring in this next year, your plaque probably says September 2023. You will actually be extended until December 31st, but you will be due to apply in this coming cycle. If you have any questions, please email us at award@elso.org or see our website. Yes, sir.
Changing it to 3 or still 2?
So we say 2 years, mainly because if you were, like I just got awarded, so I'm going to start thinking about projects and maybe start a project this year, but I won't really finish that project within that next 2 years, so.
Well, I mean, you're telling me that if I start a project, so if even an hour of the project extended, I'm serious, I'm not joking.
No, I understand you.
I've got limited
Yeah.
resources, limited.
Oh,
Thank you.
good, yeah.
So the question relates to the award is very clear when you apply for it that it's based on work done the previous 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I come out of this program really excited, want to start a SIM program at my hospital, do some surveys. My team says we'd love to have SIMs. We don't know these things. We put SIMs in place. We get this done, and it's done by November of 23. Can't use it. Doesn't count. Center of Excellence doesn't care. You have incentivized me to wait a year. Why?
I don't mean to do that, so.
I mean,
Well,
but
I
you
think-
are incentivizing me by making me sign and
I think
swear that has been done work in the previous 2 years. The next 2023 doesn't count.
I take your words under advisement, and I think we would discuss it with our group. Thank you. I'm sorry? Sorry.
Melinda from Phoenix Children's. We were also in the same boat. We had a lot of things on our application that was, it said previous 2 years, and we had a lot of things that, for our quality section, that we couldn't count because it was not within the previous 2 years. So we had to discount it and not count it towards our application.
It's a valid point. We'll definitely take it under advisement. Hey, Trace.
Hey, I just wanted to explain the original intent of the last 2 years. It was not to have old projects. If you were going to include a year that you started your project, say next year, and a lot of our projects do last more than 1 year, we would absolutely count that project. And I really appreciate the wording that's causing some confusion, and take that to heart. And so that is something maybe that we need to change. The point is not to include projects that you did in a past cycle. We really want your projects to be within this cycle. And we want you to go home and be excited and get starting on Monday. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. I did not realize how those words were sounding outside of the application. Yes. And it's wonderful input, and we thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michelle. For those of you that don't know, that are new to the ECMO and ELSO community, Michelle is pretty much single-handedly responsible for pretty much everything going on around here this week. She's pretty much single-handedly built the registry and all other things in the ECMO community. So if you don't know her already, introduce yourself. She's an asset to all of us. So thank you. Whoop. What's that? Can we go back on the slide deck to the beginning? Perfect, thank you. Oop. Oh, if you could. Anyway, the slight technical difficulty. So in the vein of, like the symposiums that we've been having on a quarterly basis, over the last 2 quarters, and that we at least intend to continue for the next quarter or 2. We wanted to, just to get the thought processes going and let you metabolize the coffee this morning, Wei Ting and I were just going to share a little bit of case presentation information regarding like navigating some unusual circumstances, some special circumstances from our experience throughout the pandemic. And then after that, I want to be very intentional about opening it up for Q&A and discussion. So this whole thing is going to work best, after we take just 15 or 20 minutes, do the thought experiment. We can either have discussion about the information that we've created, or we can have other discussion. And then I would also, I will open it up. So let me just offer one more time. I did get one text from one of our steering committee members, but I would love to open it up for anyone that wants to join us on stage that's been working with us on the steering committee to help lead that discussion. So I'm just going to run through kind of a case series of patients that we had at our hospital and some issues that raised for us. So this is essentially spanning about a 6-month cycle. Hi, Tony, how are you? Come on up. looks like Tracy is joining us. We'll do introductions when we get through this information. But spanning about a 6-month cycle from September of 21 through March of 22. I don't know, for the pediatric centers in the room, I don't know how this played out for you guys, but we essentially sat out most of the beginning of the pandemic as kids were like out of school, and our hospital was actually quite empty. Don't throw things at me. For the first 6 to 9 months of the pandemic at least. And then, we had COVID patients, but they were here and there. And then with the Omicron variant, we really saw an uptick. And so that's when, at least our center, we kind of jumped into the fray of the pandemic. So we specifically had 4 patients somewhat simultaneously. The first one was a 15-year-old. The one physical characteristic that they all shared is that they were overweight or obese. So she was 102 kilos. She spent a total of 116 days on ECMO support. She was initially cannulated to VV. We used either an Avalon or Crescent, depending on size. And then, she was originally cannulated to VVA because of the degree of inflammation and hemodynamic instability, was transitioned to a dual lumen strategy of VV through the IJ and the left femoral vein, and then was ultimately transitioned to venopulmonary ECMO through a, losing track of the patients here, through a unique cannulation strategy that I'll kind of go through. She did survive to discharge, for the record. We had a 19-year-old female, also fairly obese, 71 kilos, that spent a total of 153 days on ECMO support. She was initially cannulated to VV, transitioned to VVA because of some hemodynamic collapse, and then ultimately to venopulmonary ECMO. She did not survive to discharge. Our third patient during this time was a 17-year-old, a 57-kilo patient that spent a total of 36 days on ECMO support and remained on veno-venous dual lumen cannula support the entire time. And then we had a 16-year-old transgender male that was 56 kilos, spent a total of 42 days on ECMO support. Was initially cannulated. We finally learned our lesson. Was initially cannulated venopulmonary. Had some issues with cannula malposition. Thankfully, after the lungs had gained a little bit of recovery, which required taking that cannula out and transitioning to veno-venous support, and then was survived to discharge. So to give you a little bit of background, as with a lot of pediatric centers, we're quite spoiled in our traditional strategy of taking care of patients. We usually have one ECMO specialist to one patient, which needed some adaptability. We typically, our center did 72 runs of ECMO last year. I'd say, somewhere 60 to 65 is a more traditional year over the last 2 to 3 years. So, at any one time, we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 patients on ECMO. But, this really provided a logistical complexity for the fact that we essentially had, 4 patients, or at least 3 of those patients on at any one time. And then we had our traditional cadence of, CDHs and, post-cardiotomy patients and whatnot. So our system, our staffing, our equipment, inventory was really not set up for that, so it needed some kind of rethinking on the fly. The other thing is, our early experience in ECMO, admittedly, part of this is due to, patient selection, but was quite miserable with really poor outcomes and just a handful of patients. Like two of those 3 patients were cannulated to VA ECMO for reasons, but just were not great ECMO candidates. But we really needed to kind of rethink what we were doing. And so I'll go through that as far as our overall strategy. I'm not going to get into any depth. Again, thought experiment to induce conversation. And then well, I mentioned the logistical challenges, and then we did need to kind of rethink some of our cannulation strategies because of the conditions that we were presented with. So, reevaluating our ECMO support. So, I mentioned that we needed to rethink what we were doing here. Sorry about the graphics there. That apparently I have an ASIO graphic that's really large overlying my slide deck. As part of my steering committee role, we have monthly meetings, and Bob is always on there. For those of you that don't know, that's Bob Bartlett. And during, as we were just waiting around for people to join one morning, we were talking about COVID, and Bob mentioned, he was like, if it were me, I would reach out to the group at Chicago at Rush Medical Center, and they do manage some patients at some of the other hospitals there, because they're doing just a tremendous number of adult COVID ECMO patients and having really, really good results. And so, not being a complete idiot, I thought, oh, I should probably listen to that. So I did. I reached out. And so we made a phone call to the folks at Rush, and we asked them what they were doing, and to which they, I don't know why that ASIO, sorry, to which they, said, thematically, what we've found really, really works is they had a philosophy of cannulate, extubate, ambulate. All right, a really active philosophy of managing COVID patients. They had poor experience with tracheostomies. They had really good experience with extubating early and letting the lungs heal at their own cadence. And so we followed that strategy with this series of 4 patients. It did, I will say, the collaboration with the other center was really necessary. This wasn't a huge leap philosophically for our center. We've been, ambulating kids and whatnot, and extubating kids on ECMO for some time. But in the COVID experience, just because our pediatric ICU docs were pretty fresh to the experience, or as everyone in the country was, we're learning on the fly. It was helpful to be able to reach out to a center that had quite a bit of experience, that was pushing 3 digits of patients, almost 100 patients on ECMO. And so so they did end up publishing their experience. Mike Kotwas, I don't know if you're in the room this morning, but he was the original, he's one of the perfusionists at Rush that I reached out to, so just a special thanks to Mike and his group out there. And so we identified that we wanted to, wake these patients up and ambulate them. But it was, that presented some additional logistical challenges because we were basically committing to long-term support, right? So we were committing to what could be conceivably several months of support, as none of you are surprised with. But, for our staffing structure and whatnot, that was a little bit challenging to have, that baseline number of patients and equipment being utilized. And so we, dusted off the old ECMO, capacity planning document, which and we kind of rethought how we wanted to, or how we needed to, frankly, think about our staffing and our equipment deployment. We typically manage patients in any one of the ICUs, and the ECMO team goes to those ICUs to, we support those patients where they are. And so we adopted a strategy where we combined all of our ECMO patients in a single unit and actually combined all 3 of the ICUs. All of the ICUs came to the single unit, which was actually logistically, I was actually surprised about all the things that came up from, when you push the code button, who does the alert go to and which team is responding. You don't want the NICU team responding to a adolescent PICU patient, and vice versa. From things like that to code carts, which have entirely different medications and concentrations and everything. So it was quite the operational experience, standing up, what was an ECMO unit, but also 3 ICUs in a single direction. And I'm happy to take questions about the cadence of how that played out if you'd like to afterwards. And then the third thing I just wanted to touch on in this case series of patients is non-traditional cannulation strategy. So that, often when you commit to extubating a patient and ambulating them and letting their lungs heal at its own rate, they may not have lung function really at all, or gas exchange really at all, as I'm sure that all of you guys have experienced over the last couple of years. And so 2 of our patients were in this spot that their cannulas were slightly malpositioned, like the traditional dual lumen, percutaneous, like at Crescent or Avalon, or for one reason or another, it wasn't working. They were developing a little bit of right heart failure. We needed to rethink that, but our challenge was that if we took out the VV cannula and spent any number of minutes putting in a Protect Duo, the Spectrum cannula wasn't available on the market, but the Spectrum would be another candidate, that they wouldn't survive those couple minutes of being off ECMO support. And so tapping into some, one of our cardiac surgeons was familiar with this group that had done some transventricular LV, essentially LVAD support with not the venopulmonary LivaNova cannula, but the rapid deployment cannula, such that they placed it through the apex of the LV and drained the LV, and then the tip of the cannula was out past the aortic valve and it functioned as a VAD. So we thought, well, we could do that on the right side of the heart. And so we did on 2 of those 4 patients, so that to facilitate the transition to taking out, the dual lumen cannula that was in the IJs. And so we did a perventricular cannulation strategy of the rapid deployment cannula, which, if you're not familiar with it, is shorter, much shorter. It actually is designed more like the right atrial, like Origin cannulas, obviously a little bit bigger, but we poked a hole in the right ventricle so that it drained the right ventricle and then reinfused into the pulmonary artery, and that actually worked quite well. One of those 2 patients survived. The other one was, succumbed to the severity of her illness, but I don't think because of our cannulation strategy. So that is my synopsis. I'm going to invite Wei Ting Chang to the podium. Wei Ting is the coordinator at UCLA Medical Center, and she's just going to share some of her experience, and then we're going to open it up for discussion, whether you want to discuss some of the content that we shared or discuss anything else. So I will pass it off to Wei Ting.
Okay, so here I'm gonna just present a really unique case. This is what we did for this patient. What happened to him is really, you don't see it on all the patients, basically because it's so unique. So I really want to present it to you and then see what you think that potentially that you would do to fix this patient. So I have no disclosure. So if you guys want, you can close your eyes and I can just read you a little bit about the story of Jose. And so Jose is a 27-year-old male without any past medical history. His BMI, COVID patients more than 30, so 32.6. He graduated from UC Irvine. The reason I want to say it is because his family wasn't even have money, and then he walked all the way. His parents couldn't even speak Spanish, and he's the only child that can speak English really well. And then while going to the school and also doing part-time job to support entire family, and then was still able to graduate from University of California, which is a really good school as well. He's a son, he's a brother with 2 sisters and 1 little brothers. He's a father, and he's a husband-to-be. Okay. He has a 3-month-old daughter before he got COVID at the time. He was working in the bank as a full-time job for daytime, and then he had another full-time job at night, which is 80 hours a week, before he got hit by COVID. And you can see the picture. I get it from the website, okay? Yeah, just trying to touch you. Okay, so this is disease process. November 9th, he got COVID. He was treated as an outpatient, but 2 days later, his symptom got worse. So then he was admitted to ED at outside hospital. And then end of November, he was intubated, like a normal disease pattern for COVID. So December 2nd last year, I'm talking about everything from now, it's like last year, okay? In 2021, he was placed on VV ECMO with femoral IJ cannulation strategy, okay? And then definitely December 8, put a trach. And then because it's a long-term process, and then he was reaching to the point that he need maybe lung transplant evaluation, and also needed higher level of care. So he was transferred to UCLA on January 29 this year. So after he arrived to UCLA, we did the first ECMO conversion to VP ECMO from VV ECMO, and using the 31 French dual lumen cannula from the right IJ. And throughout the hospital course, definitely like all other COVID patients, has a lot of bleeding complications. So he developed the hematoma on the side, and then on the calf, and then also developed AKI because long-term stay on ECMO, and then also like a lot of ear infection, hospital reinfection or something, like a lot of issues. So develop AKI, which require a kidney transplant later on. So what happened? Oh my God. May 19, the incident happens, and this is out of surprise. At the time that he was actually able to ambulate, because it's like a really long course for all these COVID patients. Several months in, finally be able to ambulate, and the incident happens. So what happened is the ECMO cannula failure. Later on, we'll talk about it in more detail next slide. So then the air is definitely in the circuit. Then you have to clamp off the circuit. Within that 6 hours time frame, I remember I did not eat, and everybody, like fusionists, the nurses, the doctors, I don't think we ever even sit down at all. We were constantly in his room, because within 6 hours, he went from VP ECMO to VA ECMO as an eCPR, and then developed a north-south syndrome. So then we use the old cannula, which is still functional as a return to pulmonary artery, to become a VAP mode. I made it up, okay? And then, so with that mode, the surgeon will finally arrive and able to switch out that cannula to a VV dual lumen cannula. So then we were like, okay, so ideally if we drain everything out, unload the RV, and then to the circuit, then we should fix the north-south syndrome. So we have VVB, which is a 3 drainage cannula, and then return to the arterial site. But also definition, by the way, sorry, I should keep this. Hold on. Okay. And then I don't know. Okay, so the last one, because I couldn't see it here. So the last one is because the VVVA ECMO doesn't really work well. So what we did is we converted to VV and VA ECMO. Okay. And then because he required like high dose pressures, and then this is what happened to his leg. So for whoever that's still eating, I apologize. Okay. And his legs still look like this up to today, but he was able to walk on this leg. So just can you imagine? It's a long course for him. And definitely that we always say, when you buy one, you get 2 for free. So the complication the same, that we had 2 incident air in the circuit while he was connected to CRRT machine. Okay, so what happened on that big incident on May 19? So the incident is, this is the original cannula should look like. This is what he had. So his, the bonding was become really loose after 111 days. And then you can see as a soft tubing part, it was still attached, but it was so loose to the point that the air was sucking into the circuit, and it was tremendous amount. And then luckily we were able to catch it right away, so we clamp off. And then because we clamp off, and he has no reserve at all in his lung, so he went to hypoxic, immediately PA arrest. So the CPR was initiated, ECMO shunting was activated. We were able to get him back within 13 minutes, put him on VA ECMO. And then he has no neural deficit. Okay. And then definitely, like I just mentioned, that he went to North-South syndrome and was not able to be managed by beta blockades. So that's why we have to convert him one after another, like VAP, BBVA, and then BBVA. Okay. So continue his story. So you can see his X-ray on the right-hand side. He is a very tall gentleman, but then his lungs shrinked like a little child. Okay. And then so at the point that, because he still, every single time, I think we will all been through this issue. Is like, you don't know what is his next step. So then you will definitely talk to the patient all the time, talk to the family member all the times. And then for the longevity reason that we put him back to VP ECMO again. And that's my 6th conversion plus the initial one, which is the 7 ECMO mode that I will have to submit to ELSO registry. Okay. And then so definitely we have family meetings because at the time that he, think about his feet, that it's so difficult to walk him on his feet. And then also the insurance issue, I think there's a lot of people, you will have experience with the patient has insurance issue, might not be the candidate for transplant. So at the time, he wasn't even be considered as a transplant candidate, and then especially he need both lung and kidney transplant. So then to the point that we implemented 3 wishes, and I don't know if you guys are all familiar with 3 wishes. It's more like the end of life wish that you ask what the patient would like to do, like 3 things. We allow them to have 3 things, and then we'll try to accomplish their goal. So the big wish that he has is he wants to marry his fiancée. Okay. So here, then we have a wedding in the hospital. Lovely wife and a daughter walk down the aisle to him and has a bunch of family members. We decorate the room. Can I see your tear now? And then, so we thought it's the end of story. Guess what? This man walked. Okay, so it's in August I think probably like 3-4 months after the incident, he walked. I don't know if I can play the video. And definitely when you look at him walking, the most important piece is not physical therapy, it's not perfusionist, it's not the nurse, it's the music you play when he walks. His room is the end of the hall, so he actually walked pretty far. And then before he was transplanted, because then he got listed for lung transplant and kidney transplant. And then so before he was listed for, and then actually got a transplant, he was able to walk more than 200 feet. Okay, that's amazing. So then now he got transplanted. He was actually received the transplant before I leave from LA to here. And he's awake, even though he's been trached. But he's getting up to the chair already, and then pretty soon he's gonna walk again. So I really wanna thank you to UCLA ECMO team. They did a really amazing job, and then we took a picture yesterday, as you can see, with ELSO as our background. Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can we get the portable microphone on? So I see Tracy and Tony here, but if you guys want to join us on stage, I really want to recognize them as part of, our group of people that have been, leading these initiatives. Like I said, this is has nothing to do with me and has everything to do with you guys. So if that microphone, you guys just introduce yourselves real quick? Sure.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lowe. I actually am from Bristol Myers Squibb Children's Hospital. It's a pediatric program. And prior to that, I was at another facility for 28 years, St. Christopher, so I want to recognize them as well for that I had worked for them and also was the ECMO coordinator there, so.
Good morning, everyone. This is, my name is Tony Duculan, and I come from Houston Methodist Hospital, and I am the lead ECMO specialist there. Thank you.
Okay. That's our content that we've been presenting, so hopefully we've given you enough time to metabolize the coffee at this point. I would invite anyone that wants to open the discussion for any questions, either related to any of the topics that we shared this morning or other questions that have certainly come up that you want to share and discuss with the group.
Since you guys so quiet, I actually have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, and I have a question for everybody here. Is when will you consider, since COVID is a hot topic, so everybody was placed on VV ECMO, when is the timeline that you guys in your center that decide to convert this patient to different mode, for example, VP ECMO?
When did we decide to?
When is your timeline?
I mean, our indication is clinically indicated. We've, for full disclosure, we'd done VP ECMO in the past, but we'd always done through a Berlin cannula strategy where we did a cardiotomy and, sewed Berlin cannulas onto the pulmonary artery in the right atrium. So, we've awakened and ambulated and supported our first patient that we did that way was an 8-year-old, and he was on ECMO for about 6 months and had quite a good outcome. The surgical team decided that these COVID patients, because of their obesity, severity of illness, COVID, which was this huge unknown at the time, that they really weren't candidates for taking to the CVOR for cardiotomy, that they felt like they either were not going to survive that procedure or there was going to be so much morbidity second to that procedure. And so that's really, to be frank, the first time that we've used the venopulmonary, the neck cannula. So we were a little bit forced into it out of necessity. To answer the question, where we've gone to it in the past is usually when we develop RV failure or some degree of pending doom with the RV. So we're usually able to support gas exchange with a VV strategy, but when you add the heart into it, that becomes, when you add the right heart into it, that's really been our indication. So so that was the first time that we had done the percutaneous LivaNova cannula. One of those two, I did make mention, the challenges, at least for us, I don't know what the rest of the group feels, in smaller pediatric patients, is the distance, getting those dimensions between the drainage and the reinfusion, and oftentimes that reinfusion tip is quite deep and was actually quite buried, out into even the distal pulmonary artery in some of these patients, because, well, they were obese, they weren't terribly tall. And we actually did counterintuitively have one of the patients, the tip actually migrated back into the right ventricle, which was the patient that we ended up converting back to VV. Thankfully, that patient recovered some lung function at that time. But what are your guys' experiences? What are your indications?
Well, we usually use Protect for those who are already listed, especially when they are having issues with their respiratory function. They're going down, basically they're going down. They usually start scheduling for a VPA. And with regards to converting from VV to VPA, we don't really have a time frame. It's just when our doctors believe that it's time for them to start ambulating and these patients are not going to recover anytime soon, they start thinking about converting to VPA. So it all depends on what they think and how and when they decide to do the procedure. They talk to the intensivist the surgeons and the intensivists actually gather together and they talk about it.
I just had another question. I think I missed what you said. You said 111 days is when your cannula split from UCLA? Okay, and what did you say happened? I couldn't hear what you said. You said it migrated. If you don't mind repeating that part, I just wanted to know what caused the air to entrap.
The question was like, what happened with the cannula to entrain the air?
Yes,
Okay.
I didn't hear what she said happened to the cannula. Did she say it?
So what happened is, you know, each cannula, some cannula that actually has a bonding from the connector to the soft tubing, and it was actually the bonding, I would say, is the glue that kind of wear off like throughout the time, and then so that's what happened. Is like when that happens, we basically almost see no glue, and then it's kind of just like you have a stick of think about like a boba straw with a boba. It's like it's completely fits, but it's actually there's no glue like stick inside, and then so it can easily, especially when you crank up the RPM or if you have any suction event, it can trigger that just sucking all the air into the circuit.
We had an identical event.
Thank you.
We had an identical event with a ProTech. This one was placed left subclavian in a fairly thin person. It was non-COVID, but a long run. And I don't remember exactly how far into it, but in the 3-month range, maybe a little bit more. And we had a massive air entrainment, CPR, anoxencephalopathy, and eventually had to withdraw. And what we thought was happening is that it was a fairly thin patient, so the actual connection was fairly far away from the insertion site. So with turning the patient side to side in any movement, there was some torquing that wouldn't happen potentially otherwise, and we thought it was a fatigue fracture. It's reported at the FDA and to the company, but we saw virtually an identical event.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Follow-up question. You said that there was some hypothesis that either the alcohol-based cleaning solutions, and I don't know if you received any of that follow-up. Can you just go into that a little bit?
So what happened to the incident is, I think before us, there was a center that actually had the incident, but then their statement is the cannula cracked. So I don't know how is the cannula cracked in that specific center, but then, so the company suggests is don't use any alcohol base, which is including your ChloraPrep. And then, but for us, it's a little bit different because for our case, at the time, for our ECMO dressing change, we use Betadine. We haven't really moved to our next step for ChloraPrep routine dressing change or something. So then this cannula actually never really exposed to any alcohol based, and then the glue was still wear off. So but then we basically reported to the company. But then I think also when we talked to them, they say they had improved the product, the stuff that they use. So it shouldn't be an issue. And then that's why we feel comfortable enough. Just think about, if you pay attention to my slide, my initial VP cannula was a 31 French. And then I want to challenge you guys is when that incident happens, we only have another exactly the 31 French cannula in-house. But because they come together, and if this cannula has an issue, then was concerning if we use exactly the same group, right? So then we didn't use it. We were asking the company to ship another cannula to us, which is what they say is the glue, everything was improved. But then in the meanwhile, because the cannula was really kind of breaking apart to the point that it required an MP or a nurse or specialist to hold on to the Y and couldn't let go, because otherwise the air will go into the circuit to that point. Because that happens, and then what we did is we used another 31 French cannula, but it's a different company. It's like a VV dual lumen cannula. I will say Avalon. I think you guys are all familiar. So, but then we switch out just to kind of make sure that, because the giant hole that you cannot just put a 27 French and then shoot it around. It's gonna bleed like crazy because it's special COVID. So then, and especially he already have bleeding issues. So that's why we switch out to exactly the same size, for temporary, and then I try to help him recover, and then before we can actually convert him back to VP mode again.
Tracy, Tony, do you guys, which cannula do you use in that strategy?
We usually use the Protect.
Okay. And you've never had issues?
Avalon, no
Okay.
issues with Protect. Avalon, we used to do that before the COVID, and then Protect, because it always has that benefit of protecting
Right.
the right side.
Oh, so you don't really place an Avalon
It's
at all?
always, the Avalon was years ago when Protect came into existence, then
Okay.
we stopped using the Avalon.
Yeah.
But we still get referrals from other facilities who use Avalon, and then recently Crescent from other hospitals too.
Yeah,
And that's what we use, is the Avalon, and we're
Okay.
converting to Crescent.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, not to call out any specific company, but I'd heard of the glue issue with the Spectrum cannula, like with the early adopter centers, but the experience that we just heard, that I hadn't heard with that with the Protec as well. So, show of hands, has anyone else had like glue cannula? Let me ask a follow-up, other question. Has anyone had like cannula fracture issues?
Wow.
And has that been, please feel free to come up. We had what was like actually an unrecognized cannula fracture where with the Protec cannula, you know, the bend at the bottom of the RV was quite sharp, and when we actually ended up taking that cannula out, we identified that there was a small fracture in it, although it wasn't like clinically significant during the course of the run. Yeah.
Good morning, Ozzy from Stanford Children's. But I think what's happening with these cannulas are definitely not meant to stay in the body as long as we are keeping him now. The ECMO runs are much longer. And I think a couple of times that I experienced the cannula issues because we became very comfortable with the cannula and also with mobility of our patients. And as we did all that, I think we need to be more watchful because these ECMO runs are getting longer and longer. We have months and months of ECMO run that we're supporting our patients with the same cannula in the same position, and the integrity of the cannula and the vessel is changing. So I think that's what's happening. That's what we're experiencing, that you start seeing cracks. I'm a lot more watchful of the cannula now with our ECMO specialists and what we need to do, and with the surgeons having them more involved, that we may have to change the cannula and also approach to a different vessel.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's one other of our colleagues.
Ours was a Crescent. It was 212 days, same place, patient fluid shift up, down. We resutured it multiple times just as we were having position changes with a typical dual lumen, and it actually fractured and we got air. And I mean, eventually we needed to come off anyway, which is where we were trying to go but not able to get there.
Okay.
And then this forced the issue.
Okay.
So, and I agree with the woman before me, just the fact of being more cautious of how we're positioning, because that torque and over 212 days just gave.
Yeah, we had that same experience. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dan from Philly. We've been having a lot of problems just with disposables in general. I don't know if it's like a manufacturing issue, things that we never had problems with before that were fused were falling apart over and over and over again. So just be really careful. You know, we've been actually double tie banding things and doing all sorts of crazy stuff because things are falling apart. We had a pigtail with no one touching it just fall apart and start spraying all over the room. I think a lot of the, what we used to trust, like the glue from the factory, we don't trust anymore. Because I think there's a lot of turnover within these factories. There's been a lot of manufacturer issues. So I'm just citing that, you know, we've seen. The other thing I think we're seeing a lot of is the coating is making the tubing very slippery. It's slipping off the back of oxygenators and things like that with tie band. It's like, so anyway, just bring it up. I don't know if anybody else has been having some just manufacturer issues like that.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. That actually brings us a little bit full circle to where, you know, John was sharing the good ID. Like, the benefit of that is actually identifying lot numbers, and, you know, when you actually scan things in that manner, you can actually tell, like, you know, the name of the driver that delivered it to your hospital and what his dog's name is. So I would advocate in the short term, you know, like, if you do have issues with product, ECMO-related product, that you feel is, you know, non-traditional, I would report it to ELSO, and if we, like, have any sort of signal or you know, cluster, that ELSO would probably reach back out to you as an organization, but may, you know, work to track that down a little bit. So please use that resource. Yes.
Ours was a Femflex 2 on an adult COVID patient. We had 2 drains femoral, and the return was IJ. Nobody was touching the patient, and we were in the OR. We were about to convert him to subclavian, and all of a sudden, I hear a faucet. Psh, and it was just dumping. The cannula, the Femflex 2, had split completely, all on its own, in half, and it was just draining blood all over the floor. So our team has a practice of taking all the lot numbers. So all of the Femflex 2 with the same lot number, we took them all down. I think what we could have done better, because we were mid-COVID and everything, I think what we learned from that is, yeah, I think we need to report those incidents to ELSO so that we can communicate it to other centers too.
Agreed. And I think what has become obvious is it's not, you know, single to any particular manufacturer. I think it's probably specific to how good we've all gotten at the job of keeping patients alive for a really long time. Okay, so that we'll have to end it there. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining this morning. Really appreciate you getting up early in the morning. Please, we'll be around for a little bit, any one of us on the stage here. If you're interested in, like, joining the efforts in the steering committee, I would absolutely welcome anyone that wants to participate in those efforts. Please, reach out to those. I'm happy to share my cell phone or email address. And you know, I have had people ask, like, hey, you know, I got promoted and I'm not technically a coordinator anymore. Can I still participate? Or, you know, or I have a leadership role in my center, but, you know, like, we have several different job titles. I don't care what your job title is. This is about inclusivity, and it's about, like, if you have a role in growing your program, we would love for you to participate. So thank you very much.
Thank you.